All right, so here we are at Collision Conference in Toronto, lovely Toronto. Oh my God, the timing, we're gonna have to lean in. So why don't you talk to me a little bit about who you are, what you do, and the role that trust plays in your organization.
Yeah, so Kiki, good morning. Thanks.
Morning.
Pleasure to meet. Yeah, we're just meeting. A mutual friend collided us together here at Collision Conference.
Yes.
So this is what this event's all about, right? The serendipity that happens when
that's exactly
folks run into
each
other. So good morning. My name is Jason Williams, from Indianapolis, Indiana. So we're leaving the States to meet up here in Toronto, Canada. So I wear a couple of different hats. So most recently coming off a stint as full-time executive director for an organization called Centric in Indianapolis, so an innovation network. So this is a group that really connects and educates corporate innovators and folks from across many different industries, and we host workshops and conferences and things of that nature. Also a partner at a new initiative called InnoPower. So this is starting with a conference, but will be a continued initiative focusing on diversity and inclusion when it comes to the innovation and entrepreneurship communities. And then also the founder and principal of Jawbrain, which is my own consulting in the innovation space and helping folks tap into innovation.
I love that. So, you know, tribes and trust, this is a big area for me. And tribes, communities, talk to me about building a community of innovators and really trying to sort of foster this idea of community and innovation and having it so that people feel like they belong, not that they're necessarily competing against each other all the time.
Yeah, so I think when you say community, right, I mean, immediately you start thinking about people. I think too often, right, we want to try and label all these, industry or business initiatives as B2B, B2C. I mean, I'm a believer in that H to H, right? Everything we do is human to human.
I love it.
I guess I can, speak with putting my Centric hat back on, looking at the network that Centric has been able to build over a decade or so. And there was always that community aspect of, finding your tribe. I mean, absolutely talking, using even that word tribe. So when it comes to, the innovators, especially within large organizations, right? Oftentimes, rigid, old, established organizations can be a tough place for the crazy-minded innovator.
Right.
And I think we've heard this multiple times from folks over the years that Centric had kind of built up a tribe because we were that island of misfit toys, right? at our various meetups or conferences and workshops.
I like islands like that.
Yeah, we would have people that's like, I'm the crazy innovator within my own organization, but I come here and there's others like me out there.
Right.
So whether you're coming from a Fortune 500, manufacturer bioscience company, there's someone else at the, the local orchestra, or, another Fortune 500 from a completely different industry, and right, but you all kind of share that, that tribal knowledge of creativity and innovation, and so that's what it's all about.
I can imagine that for organizations who are looking for truly innovative minds, that something like this, a community like this, would be really provocative for them and interesting as far as, like, have you been approached by these companies to come and sort of approach the brain trust that is, I mean, like that's like a built-in mastermind sort of for a company to throw some ideas at, right?
Yeah, no, great observation. And we've had those conversations, and we've had some opportunities over the years to do that kind of, an ideation session, if you will, with the brain trust. And lately, just because of, building up the, kind of established, brand of the convener and the group that organizes innovation-related events and workshops, it's been more on that side of, helping, newer folks in innovation role in large companies, tapping into Centric's knowledge and experience. Just, hey, how do I help build a culture of innovation? How do we help start establishing internal workshops and event series?
I'm actually, this is making me think of something else that I want to talk to you after the interview about, which is, I mean, have you been approached about branching this idea into other areas? I mean, if it runs so well and people are so happy with it, looking at that model and figuring out how to take it to other locations like DC or something,
right.
Have you already done that? Have you been thinking about that?
Formally it hasn't branched off. I mean, again, I would say that's one we do get asked about that, especially when I'm at an event like this, meeting folks from lots of different places. I mean, in this case, literally every corner of the world is who you can bounce in, run into, walking the floor of Collision. I think, obviously on the surface, it's very intriguing to folks, right? And I do know that even in just the US, there are not many organizations like ours that are, I should say, agnostic. So I like to say we're industry agnostic, right? It's, there's a lot of groups, as you know, in your association work, right? There's a ton of groups, maybe we're here to tech conference, right? There's tons of tech organizations. Even in central Indiana, we have organizations that do a great job of convening the tech industry.
Right.
But there's not many out there that, you can say the tech industry is at the table, as well as the arts and the humanities and the life sciences.
That's where true innovation happens.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And actually, I would point you and your audience to one of our past presidents, Doug McColgan. He's now an innovation lead up at Cellular One in the Chicago market. But he had the opportunity to speak at TEDx Indianapolis a few years ago and gave a talk called Networking is Not Working. So I would certainly encourage you. That's an easy, YouTube search to just Networking is Not Working, TEDx Indianapolis. But really talking about the benefits of, getting outside of your sector and even within a company, right? It's getting, that cross-department collaboration and just, the benefits that come when you're, really meeting with strangers.
Well, so I want to shift and talk a little bit about in your consulting work, when you go and you're working with different people, you're talking about technologies, you're talking about communication, you're talking about things that people have trust issues with in general, especially in the wake of things like Cambridge Analytica and stuff like that. Like how do you approach communications and technology? I guess what challenges have you been facing in your own work with people that maybe you have to overcome trust issues that they have?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, fortunately, not as many challenges, I guess, but I look at the flip side of that of, I think why, Centric has worked locally. And I think, the trust factor is, getting back to that human to human model, right? I think the trust, some of it comes, especially when you're starting to build a community and an association of sorts, it starts with the people involved. And I think if everyone involved is, trustworthy and right, I mean, everyone's in it for the right reasons, and the public facing efforts are for the right reasons, and you're collaborative in the community. And people know there's really not an ulterior motive, right? And I think we've done a great job of positioning, these efforts in that. Look, I mentioned there are lots of industry-focused, organizations in Indiana, and Centric being this, this agnostic group. But I think it's always been, from a stance of collaboration, not competition. Recognizing, look, it's better for the region if the more at the table, the better. But I think that trust has come from taking that stance and doing it the right way.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a hard question.
Yeah.
I think it's a hard question. It might be easy for you. Either way, I think it's an important one, and that is when you're building a community and you're sort of responsible for it, guiding it in the right direction. And you inevitably, when there's value presented by people working together, there's a question of, should we monetize this, or should this break apart from the official group, or how do we? And that can cause a lot of turmoil and a lot of stress, I think, in different collaborations and different groups. How have you dealt with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a great question, right? Because everyone loves to do cool things, but at the end of the day, right? If to keep things going or to invest more time in things you want to run, right? Hey, money has to be involved, right? So, Yeah, I mean, we've certainly, I guess, no different than lots of groups that have built up communities over the years, right? Thinking things like, okay, paid events and what are the levels of registrations, right? Just
Right.
thinking about revenue, membership, paid membership versus open membership versus public events, private events. So, yeah, I think we've certainly gone through those. I think, ultimately it's been about, just trying some models. And we initially started like membership, for example, right, because there was a regular routine of monthly workshops, right, starting with kind of a glorified season pass, if you will. And really that, knowing that we had a large corporate audience, it was, hey, invoice me in January for the whole year rather than make me turn in an expense once a month. So that worked. But I do think that at least for the organizations that I've been a part of, running there, it was more, look, this is still, you want it to be accessible. So, certainly was never going to be a members only. It was just, hey, if, there is a portion of the community that, is more engaged and more interested in membership. And so then it's thinking about, okay, everything's open to anyone.
Right.
But if there are folks that want to pony up for, a membership, what are those additional values that you can bring to the table of, extra events or, just helping members connect with one another to go a little deeper, in the benefits that we can provide.
Okay. One last question. It has nothing to do with tribes or trust or associations, really, except it's to say that from doing a little bit of research on you before meeting with you, I saw that you're also a speaker. So what are sort of what's your sweet spot for speaking? Because I have a lot of people in the audience who hire speakers and are always looking. So what's your zone? What is the topic that you love to talk about?
Yeah, so really the area I'm leaning into is innovation, and I laugh because that can be a buzzword, right? And people, innovation can mean you ask 100 people, you might get 150 different explanations for what innovation is. But I think the best elevator pitch came from a gal I got to know out in San Francisco, and she just looked at me and said, "You're a can opener. You tap into innovation for folks."
Wow.
And so we specifically with innovation, and I look forward to coming in and helping organizations. I mean, either helping them put together programs, and certainly coming in and speaking and teaching to audiences, is thinking about, okay, where do you start, right? How do you start building a culture of innovation? And that's where I lean on, several years of really having a front row seat to some of the biggest companies, especially in Indiana, but some of the biggest companies, and working with these folks, the innovation directors, to know what works, what doesn't, right? So just leaning on a library of best practices, and then I think it's also that that connection piece, and not only building organizations that are really good at connecting people right across different industries. That's also a lot of my professional background in just market research and having hands in lots of different products and industries. Of just how do you start putting the tools and processes in place to start connecting those dots, the insights across different categories, and really all around exploring and connecting and really building up curiosity as a tool.
I love it. Curiosity as a tool. Okay, so you heard it here first. I mean, you've got to bring this guy in to talk about innovation. Thank you so much for talking with me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, real pleasure. Thanks.
Yeah.